Okay, so the title of this is We Are All Animals. And you really need to let that sink in and what that means because really most of us are incredibly lacking in self awareness. That's not to say everybody, okay, but many, if not the majority. There are levels of self-awareness, so you can be aware of a certain part of yourself, but there are also deeper levels that you need to understand. I mean, that's part of like the whole psychotherapy and stuff like that. They kind of dig deep in trying to understand. Okay, so what do I mean by Pavlov's dog and Skinner's rat? Okay. It's very, very easy. Pavlov's dog, what happened with Pavlov's dog is basically the training. A physical response would come out of an artificial stimuli. A bell would ring and the dog would salivate. It had no reason to salivate, but the reason it salivated is that every time that the bell rang, it was given food. And after doing that over a certain period of time, the dog gets conditioned physically. And when it hears the bell, it expects the food. And when we're hungry, what do? We salivate. I'm even salivating right now because I'm talking about food and I'm not really hungry. Now, I mean, that is it in its simplest form. The bell rings and the dog salivates. Now, you can certainly look at every single holiday on the calendar and look at it as that bell. Because we have been conditioned and we have been taught over the years that on Valentine's Day we do this, on St. Patrick's Day we do that, on 4th of July we do this, on Thanksgiving we do this. Now, the larger the group that is conditioned, okay, the harder it is to resist the conditioning because I mean we all kind of want to belong. Okay, I'm going to give you an example from my lifestyle or my life a little bit. I was born in Pennsylvania, Easton, Pennsylvania, which I was told, I never verified, but I know it's true. Larry Holmes, the boxer, that's where he was born. And he actually opened up a bar. I don't know if it's still up there or is kind of called like the Last Round or something like that. But that's and my family as on my father's side, as I understand it, we go back, to pre signing of the Declaration of Independence, and I was told, and this is unverified, that one of the signers is related to us of the Constitution. Again, I don't know if that's true, but it's really weird because when I did look at that signature, my signature was oddly similar. Now, I mean, I can't draw too many conclusions from that because, I was taught calligraphy in school. And so I would write a certain way. And of course, calligraphy was a more formal way of writing back in the 1700s. And so, the fact that there's a resemblance between my signature and this person's signature, it could mean a little bit. And I don't know. And, at some point, if I ever have the money and I can, go into the genealogy type of thing and pay for all that stuff, I might, my uncle my dad's father, who passed away not too long ago, he was really into digging into family history. And he went as far as telling me that we were related to someone that was uh, in the Union Army by the name of Montgomery Shannon. uh, and I can't remember. He was more than a sergeant. I know that he was kind of a leader of sorts, and he lost a part of his leg, I think, during the Civil War. But so my family, there's a German, Dutch, Welsh. My grandmother was Welsh, but Scottish, a lot of Scottish, and of course, in those areas you have the Quakers and the Amish and stuff like that. So, and I really love the state of Pennsylvania. Of course, I have great memories of it. I don't live there anymore, but driving through the countryside. And I have been able to go back and actually travel more in Pennsylvania than I did when I was young. And I really didn't live there that long. I left the country when I was 10 years old, and I didn't know I was not coming back for a while when that happened. But one of the things that would happen in my family is that it seemed like, and I don't know, it might have been every other weekend, once a month, I can't remember exactly, but we would visit my grandparents often. And my grandfather was a sort of a salt of the earth guy. He actually built his house. He was an electrician. He lost a finger grabbing a live wire. Um, he's one of those barrel chested old dudes, smoked a corncob pipe. I mean, quite a presence or a character. And apparently my family has a lot of history in that particular area. Allentown, Scranton, Easton, and then on the west side of New Jersey, and Alpha, and Phillipsburg. I lived actually in Washington when I was growing up. But we would go and visit my grandparents often. And my dad was the youngest of four. Um, he had two brothers and one sister. He's passed away as well, and they were all in the service. My dad was in the Army. His other brother was in the Navy, and the other one was in the Air Force. And there's actually a really cool photo of the three standing like in the middle of the country road, which is where my grandfather lived, like right off the banks of the Delaware River, standing in the middle of this country road, lined up with their uniforms in a very specific pose. I need to find that picture, and I know I will. It's somewhere. But we would get together, and or they would get together, I would say. Of course, the kids were dragged along, um, and they had a habit of playing penny poker. Two card stud was the game that they loved to play the most. Or was it two card stud? Or no, seven card stud. Seven card stud was the game that they liked to play a lot. And I would actually sit, and I was kind of considered one of the grown-ups, good luck charm, and I would draw the cards and stuff like that. But along with the gambling, there was a lot of beer drinking, a lot of alcohol. My grandfather had a clock in his house that said, no drinking before 5, and all the numbers on the clock were 5. And so there was a lot of drinking and smoking. So my grandfather smoked a pipe. My dad smoked cigarettes, filterless. He rolled his own for a long time, and he was in the Army, bugle boy and stuff, and that's what they did. They got together, and they would play cards, and they would smoke and drink a lot of beer. Well, I came back to the United States, and when I was 17, and there was a lot that I missed about it. And of course, the experiences that I had with my family. But we didn't return to that area. We went to Missouri. It was a totally new area where we didn't know anybody, and that's an entirely different story. But what did I think was the right, sort of appropriate behavior? I would go see bands, I would smoke, and I would drink. I learned that behavior from my environment. And because where I left, it wasn't a lot different. I would say it was different to a certain extent. Well, I know it was dramatically different, really. Not as much drinking, but it was more sort of party related. So if there was a party, then of course there was drinking, but that was on my mother's side. But on my dad's side, it didn't matter if it was a holiday or not, whatever day of the week. And I mean, my grandfather had like cases of beer on his porch, you know. My dad would buy cartons of cigarettes and put them in the freezer and smoke in the car with us, the kids, and we were a total of four. Um, but I felt I was a functioning alcoholic. I don't drink alcohol anymore. I've I've managed to shed the shit out of my system, I like to say. I don't do that. I don't smoke cigarettes, and and then I actually had sort of a gambling addiction. I do like to play poker, but I can play it now and stop. Whereas, I've spent 24 hours at a table playing Texas Hold'em. Love Texas Hold'em. I went overboard on that, all books and stuff. Really, it was a lot of fun. And I actually sort of managed to sit at a table with a couple of the well-known pros, which was kind of interesting because I had a job that gave me that opportunity. I had traveled the United States a lot, and so going to different places and being bored and not really knowing what to do, or not actually saying, "Oh, okay, let me go look for a poker game," and that's what I would do. And sometimes I didn't. I mean, I'd go the next morning and to do my work, and I would have like $1,000 in my pocket or $2,000. I did swings in that general range. It's like a 2,000 range up or down, north or south of that number. I had a decent paying job. I really did. I can't, some not bad, better than average. But I was conditioned, and I thought that behavior was normal. Of course, I don't do that anymore, so it's not. But all of us experience some form of conditioning, and it's not a very simple linear conditioning. It's not like just the bell rings and I do something. It's very complex. It's a series of puzzles that we have to contend with, and so again, kind of going back to on the calendar. All those dates are artificial. Father's Day, Mother's Day, Christmas, all of these days, they are pretend. They are make believe. They are not real days that exist in the calendar. These are not, days that exist in and of themselves. They got there, and at some point, we, we don't understand the nature of how we even manipulate ourselves. We don't see it. We do. It is incredibly, incredibly hard to see. Um, Skinner's rat was a little bit more complex, actually, and gives us a better idea of how this works. Because with Skinner's rat, you can do the research on it and look it up. Again, we have a conditioned behavior where a light goes on and the rat pulls a lever, learns that the lever, when the lever gets pulled, it has a food pellet come out. But here's the scary thing about that is that when the way they've done the experiment, they would actually at one point cut off the food, but the rat would still push the lever. You see, that's where we're at. Okay, where there was so there's pushing the lever feverishly, and still nothing would come out, but it's still pushing the lever feverishly. That is what we are doing. I mean, when because there's really, I mean, if you stop and think about it, there is really no true good reward out of all the sacrifice and effort that's made to comply with the behavior that's expected, on Christmas or Thanksgiving. There's really, I mean, we say, oh, I'm happy with my family and everything like that. And yeah, I get it. I mean, it's nice to be with family and everything like that. But, we don't need artificial days to be with family and be happy with family. We really don't. I mean, but we accept that. And so what we experience, I mean, I mean, our behavior definitely benefits Jeff Bezos. It definitely benefits Exxon, and whoever's leading Exxon at this point, I really don't know. It benefits, all the businesses because, I mean, these are all, sort of consumer driven holidays. Uh, that they are we are taught to consume. We'll drink beer, we'll blast firecrackers, we'll kneel, we'll search for eggs, we'll do all kinds of weird shit, and there's really no good reward coming out of that. It's just like we're spinning our wheels because we just really don't know what the fuck to do. And you know it's kind of like a sad place to be, especially the more conditioned animals that we have to grow up. What I have been doing is deprogramming myself. I have deprogrammed myself a lot. I mean, I don't weigh almost 250 pounds anymore. I'm 5'6", and now I'm down to 170. um, I did that, in most of the cases I had to challenge myself in order to get to that point. And that's something that I would ask you, to do. Hypnotized people don't know they're hypnotized. Stupid people don't know they're stupid. Conditioned animals don't know they're conditioned. You know, so when it's a very hard battle because there's a lot of the behavior that some of us that do believe in social justice. Um, you know, there's a lot of the behavior that basically falls into the trap that basically feeds the system that is destroying us. For example, professional sports. Professional sports is really, I mean, there's no reason why you should lose your mind over a game. Uh, but we've been conditioned to lose our minds over games, and we don't understand that. We don't see that. you know so in a way, I mean, when you see somebody who's like you think is stupid, really, we're just wound up toys that behave the way they're supposed to behave. And this is on a spectrum. Some are have a greater degree of social conditioning than other people. If you grow up in a small community, with a certain group of people, and you don't go out very much, you don't see the world, your mindset, your reality is a lot different from somebody's that does get to see things in other places. And that dissonance between the reality that we have in our head and the reality that is on the outside world. Okay, when there is a lot of disagreement with that, we respond to it in a different way. So we, basically we'll back off, and I'm kind of losing my train of thought here a little bit. But we are conditioned animals on a spectrum. Some of us are more conditioned than others. And so in essence, what I'm saying is that stupidity isn't stupidity per se. What it is basically somebody that's landlocked, inside of their brain. And it's really, they cannot see because they have been so conditioned, that their reality is a lot more different than some of ours. I am, in a certain degree, lucky in the fact that, and I don't believe in luck really. There's just the circumstances that sort of developed is that my environment changed a lot. So I didn't have the opportunity to be conditioned uh, in the same way that a lot of other people are conditioned. And there's a lot of people like me, people, for example, I have a dear friend of mine. She was she's a sort of what they call the army brat. Her dad was in the service. They traveled a lot. They moved to different places, and her and I see things very similarly. I mean, we kind of get it. I almost feel like she's my sister, because of how, um, how clearly we sort of line up on certain issues. Not everything, not everything, okay, but there are certain things, and I do believe that having come out of that conditioning helps us see those things just a little bit better. I used to have a great degree of discomfort around homosexuals. I really didn't feel that comfortable around it. You know, but over time, this has evolved, and again, it's kind of removing myself, and I sort of see. I mean, really, it's innocuous. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. Okay. However, I will say this, that again, many of us, okay, are conditioned into accepting certain forms of behavior, um, that may not necessarily be that rewarding, or we kind of tend to justify things in our head. And thinking is sort of an illusion, because all it is, most of the times we really don't think. We're like bumper cars. We're bumping against each other, and we're sort of turning the wheel in the direction that we are predisposed to turning the wheel to. um, so it's a very, very interesting, but scary, scary thing. And what's happened is, and of course, you start thinking about these conditions. And this happens all across the country. So you have these bubbles of people, basically, that see reality in a much different light than other people. And sadly, there has been this sort of this, these false dichotomies, Republican and Democrat. In honesty, a person, I don't think that any individual should just say, "Oh, I'm going to a lifelong Democrat," or whatever. Really, it's to my advantage to be independent. I was independent for a long time until I signed up because I wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders in the primary. And I'm going to change my registration back. I just haven't gotten around to it, because really, at the end of the day, both hierarchies serve themselves. They try to protect their particular interests. At this point in time, it's almost like a good king and a bad king. We really do live in a feudal system, and all of the CEOs of these large companies and stuff like that are like the kings and the barons and what have you. That's why Jeff Bezos says, to Joe, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. I mean, Joe's the leader of, of the government pyramid. But Jeff Bezos is the leader of the Amazon pyramid, just like Bill Soft is the leader of the Microsoft pyramid. They all have their serfs. They all have their sort of their economic reality. That's the same, with any institution like the police. They nobody wants to stop growing. They all want to continue growing. So we keep feeding the military, we keep feeding the police, not because they keep demanding it, because they want to continue eating. The only way it's going to stop is a complete collapse, because we do live in a house of cards. It has devolved into a situation where it's completely unsustainable. So we are conditioned animals, and we need to understand that. you know when you go see a show at the Universal Park, an animal show, or wherever it is, some kind of zoo, the animals, I mean, all of the things that the animals do in these shows, these are not things that come naturally to the animals. They are trained to do that. And we are the same way. We have been trained to behave in certain ways, you know. And the only way to really kind of break the mold is cut cold turkey. I mean, you just have to see it, you know. So, like, I don't waste my time with alcohol anymore. I mean, it's just nonsense. And I tell you, I can stand in the middle of a bar on New Year's Eve, and somebody can offer me a Jello shot, and I'll say no. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't help me. It's just, why would I? It makes no sense. I used to be a baseball fan. I don't care about baseball anymore, you know. But there were certain things that were expected. Oh yeah, everybody lives in this. Everybody cheers for the same team. Blah 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 blah. Conformity, conformity, conformity and the more intense the conformity is, of course, the harder it is to break out of it. You look at me. I have green hair. I have people criticize me and say, at your age, and I was like, fuck you. There's no rule book as far as how you're supposed to behave at a certain age. There's no rule book, whether or not what you're supposed to do with your hair or anything like that. There all of these constructs that are in people's brains are just artificial constructs. That's all they are. I mean, at the end of the day, we are born, and most people just want to fucking, just fucking live, you know, just fucking. And there's no reason that any of us, at this point in time, with all the wealth that there is in the world, there's no reason that anybody should not be able to live their life and pursue, their own, and enjoy freedom and pursue their own happiness. But we have to really understand what that means, and to me, I mean, the happiness does look a lot like the Native American Indians that lived in this country. The happiness does look like the small, sustainable communities that are really that sort of live in a harmonious way. I mean, the game of telephone tells you how it works. I mean, the message gets diluted the more people that play the game. If you're playing telephone in a circle of four people, it's not as much fun as it is when it is a circle of 12 people or 24, because you see how bizarre, the message changes from point A to point Z. It and you go and you just laugh at the end, but really that is a reflection of reality. You know, for me, it doesn't matter. A lot of people say, "Well, what about God? What about this? What about that?" It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. God, because it's nothing that really is involved in our day-to-day situations. How do we deal with the people that we have to deal with? But how do you deal with meat puppets? That's a meat puppet is simply somebody that is so socially conditioned that they are completely unaware of how socially conditioned they are. A stupid person cannot recognize they're stupid. A hypnotized person cannot recognize they're hypnotized. A groomed person cannot recognize they're groomed. Ron DeSantis, I mean, he is groomed to no fault. I mean, everything that he thinks is all artificial construct, and he has been raised in this environment where he really believes this. The culture here in America is really pretty straightforward when you stop and think about it. It's always, always, always uh, chosen to side with the individual over society's benefits. Every individual has to sacrifice something for the good of society. But when society is 3 million people large, what are the sacrifices that you're supposed to make? I mean, at that point in time, these institutions are like the queen bee, and we are the ants that are just part of the colony. And in order for that to exist, we have to perform our function, you know. So it is a very, very complex situation. It's not easy. But, when people, it's not politics. I mean, politics, all politics is really is sort of managing different groups, managing the amount of power and control they have. That's what. So discussing, if I'm a group and I feel like I represent a certain size group, and then I am going to basically, um, you know, make a voice for that particular group. That's politics. And the politician, of course, wants to kind of maintain their group because they know, or the larger their group, the more power they have. So, they lie to people to manipulate them and to have them be part of their group. Social conditioning, social behavioral conditioning is a real thing. And that is actually the problem that we're dealing with today. We are all animals. We need to understand that. And we need to break away from all of the nonsense and all of the bullshit that we have been taught. Say no to Pavlov's bell. Say no to Skinner's box. Find yourself. Really find yourself. That's all I have for today. Take it easy. Stay safe.